Jay, on a day when Landon Collins is not out there, it sort of puts more of a spotlight on the other safeties. What have you kind of seen from that group so far, in particular Troy Apke?
Apke's doing well. It's been good to see him get a lot of these reps and work. Obviously, last year he didn't get a whole lot with his hamstring, so he's progressing nicely. Everett's also picked up the slack. He's done a very good job, and Reeves, he made some big plays out there today, so those guys are taking advantage of their time.
Speaking of safeties, how's Monte kind of come across? How's he developed during this offseason? What do you guys kind of want to see from him? And from the arrest part, was there anything lingering on from that, or did you guys just move on as far as discipline-wise?
Yeah, we're just moving on, and the big thing with Monte is just to get the communication down with Landon and whoever the other safety is, and that's the big thing about the safety position is who's down, who's in the post, the communication is critical for those guys, and the more work they get, the more situations we can put them in, red zone, third down, first, second down, all that good stuff, the better they're going to be. But with Apke, Nick, Monte, those are the most important things, critical things for them, just to get the reps and get the communication.
Why do you think Monte had a down year last year?
Pardon me?
Why do you think Monte why do you think he wasn't?
Well, he was having a good year, and then we made the trade for Haha, which moved him down to third, I guess. So the reps didn't quite come as plentiful as they were before we got Haha. So that's probably why.
But do you feel like the impact was as good as his rookie year? Or
well, we had high hopes for him. He had a couple injuries also that set him back a little bit, so couldn't get him in there as often as we would like.
Where is Jaron Christian at injury-wise, and has he had some kind of setback that he is still not participating?
No, he's fine. He's just rehabbing. He did blow his knee out last year. So
the plan you knew going into the offseason,
he's on pace to be ready for training camp. That was the goal with him. And a lot of these guys, Geis, Christian, some of these other guys, Jordan Reed, we could have maybe pushed them back in here, but there's really the most important thing is for them to get the rehab, get them back to training camp full strength.
Determination because Christian's obviously a young player, could use reps, but at the same time, health is most important. So how do you decide who to push and who?
That's up to the trainers and doctors, and they give us a gauge. And some guys we kind of let practice a little bit, do some individual work, no team stuff. Brought them along slowly in that regard. Sheriff is a great example. He didn't do a lot of team stuff, but we let him do some individual. Morgan was the same way. But with Christian, we thought it was best suited for him to stay away and mainly do the work in the weight room and the training room.
Jay, would you have liked to have gotten a little more chance to look at Eric Flowers at guard instead of having to kind of use him at tackle at this? And are you still committed to that experiment of playing him at guard? Or?
Yeah, we are. And I think, with the lack of tackles that we had participate, we had to put him at tackle. And he did a good job. But we did start him at guard early, and he did a good job. But I think once we get to training camp, we'll try to get him back at guard. Wes did a good job with his reps in there at guard. We needed to get him some work. So we got a lot of guys kind of moving around different positions. Catalina got back in there, played some tackle, some guard. So, Dunn's played some guard, some center. So these guys have been playing multiple spots. Now it's a matter once we get to training camp to try to get a depth chart somewhat together. Once everybody's healthy, who's going to be there, and then go from there.
Dwayne told us a few minutes ago that he plans to spend most of the next 5-6 weeks around here, lifting, heading the playbook. How important is this next month and a half for a rookie quarterback who's going into a training camp battle for the starting job?
That's very important. He's got to learn it. If he feels like he's a little bit unsure of anything, he's got to study it and continue to go over it in his mind and rehash it, and we'll have plenty of videos to watch and all that good stuff. So Dwayne's going to work hard at it, that's for sure. When he comes back to camp, hopefully it'll be more natural to him calling plays in the huddle. Like I said before, it's the first time he's had to do it. We threw a lot at him, formation, motions, protections, route concepts, run concepts, audibles, 2-minute, no huddle, all that stuff. There's a lot to learn for the kid. But we want to get it all out there for him so he has an understanding what it's going to be like come training camp. So long way to go, but I like where he's at.
Along those lines, what's your message to the guys now for these next 5 weeks before Richmond?
Well, I think they're in great shape. Chad has done a good job. Larry, training staff, getting these guys ready. I think they're in as good a shape as I've seen them. You know, I'm really most impressed with the rookies, man. The rookies came in here. They're in phenomenal shape, you know. So the main thing is to maintain it. That's the big thing. You just got to maintain it so when you come back to training camp, there's not a period of time where we have to get you back into shape. You got to stay in shape. That's the most important thing.
We won't get to talk to you for a while. Is there any Trent Williams update?
Trent Williams? No.
If he's not there when training camp opens, how big of a concern is that for you?
If
he's not there when camp opens, how big of a concern?
There's a lot of ifs that we can go over right now. I don't have time. I don't know what's going to happen. If Dwayne Haskins isn't there, I'll be concerned. And if Case Keenum decides not to show up, I'll be concerned.
But you expect all those guys to be there, right?
I expect everybody to be there, yes.
Okay.
Jay, when you added Collins, you've added Sweat, you'd added some impact people on that side of the ball. What's your dream, best-case scenario for this defense?
I really like, I know it's early, but I like our defense's mentality, number one. I think we have a tough edge to us, and I'm expecting that to carry over. I think it starts with our defensive linemen, Jonathan and Duran and Matt, Kerrigan, and Adam Sweat. I think those guys up front sets the stages for everybody. Now you have a tone setter in Landon Collins that can help stop the run, obviously, and be an impact player before he comes secondary. I've been really, really, really impressed with Fabian Moreau. I think his development has been outstanding both at the corner and a nickel spot. Obviously, the other safety we talked about, Apke and obviously Monte. Reeves, you know, some of those guys, Everett, those guys are going to have to step up. And then inside backer, you know, even though we lost Ruben, we had high hopes for, but we still didn't really know what he was going to bring to us. Have a Mason and Bostic competing, and Sean Dion Hamilton, I think, along with Fabian, are the two most improved players out here.
Josh Dotson wasn't here today. Was he here yesterday?
Yeah, he's been here the whole time.
So in terms of just what you've seen from him, how have you seen his progression? I know feels like we've been asking you this question for the last 4 years, but just what do you see for him kind of going forward? What do you guys need from him for the going?
Same thing. We just got to get, you know, hopefully more production for him and he gets more opportunities. But, you know, I can't promise he's going to get a ton of opportunities with the group of guys that we have. You know, with Jordan Reed healthy and Chris Thompson healthy, you know, still, you know, they're still going to get their opportunities. And then with watching Terry play, he's going to get his. And we haven't talked about Paul yet. Trey Quinn's going to get some. So I think the whole intent of this offense is to be able to spread the ball around. Still want to run the ball, hand the ball to Adrian and Geis and Samaje. So, you know, it's about spreading the ball around and everybody taking advantage of the number when their number's called.
Just ask you about injured running backs with Geis and Love. You'll expect Geis back for camp? What about Love? Or?
I do expect Geis for camp. Love, I'm not too sure. You know, we'll have to wait and see on that one.
Doxson, if he was here yesterday, he's not injured or anything, right? He just
No.
Last year, you stressed having Pirine around to kind of be a backup to Adrian Peterson. Do you think Geis can kind of split those carries with Peterson, or do you like having Pirine around to kind of serve that same role in 2019?
You know, with Geis not here and Peterson not here for the majority of camp, Pirine has done an excellent job. He's been one of our top performers on offense, really. So I don't have – I wish I had a crystal ball to tell you, but I do know that those are three very good football players. Adrian, I mean, Hall of Famer. Geis, we drafted in the second round for a reason. And then Pirine has continued to get stronger and stronger in the weight room. He's a powerful running back, and he has not had the opportunities that he probably deserves or needs. But we just have to figure out a way to make the competition fair and play the best player, no matter who they are or where they're from.
Jay, we've talked to the guys about their next 5 weeks. What about you? What are these next 5 weeks like for you?
Well, I don't know yet. I haven't really decided. I got a few things to do to get ready for training camp. Play a little golf, maybe. Maybe get away for a little bit. I can't tell you where I'm going. You might follow me. This microphone. But no, I don't know. I don't have any big plans yet.
Just back to P. Ryan, a guy that's that big and that strong. You've always talked about wanting a fullback. You haven't broken camp with a fullback. Could he ever help you in that role?
We tried him there a couple times a couple years ago. I'm sure he could probably do it. That's an option, but he's also a tailback in his mind, and he wants the ball. So push comes to shove, if we need to have a fullback and he's the only one here, then he surely could do it because he's got the power to do it. We got Wellman here right now. He's doing a nice job. J.P. Holtz can both play fullback and tight end, so they're filling that role for us right now.
And where is the vacation?
Where?
Thanks, Coach.
All righty.
Thank you, Jay.
I think as everyone that knows Jay, when I was interviewing, we're just having some banter, ice breaking, and he was just messing with me like, how do you say your name again? And he knew how to say it, but I've been married for a long time and my wife's still practicing on saying it properly. So don't feel bad if you butcher it.
Coach, I'm curious about with Terry McLaurin. We heard a lot about him with his speed and as skills as a receiver, but coming into the draft, I also heard a lot about his performance on special teams. What have you seen from him so far, and how do you think you can deploy a rookie in both receiver and on teams?
Very good question. So 3 of the most important traits playing special teams: smart, tough, and very fast. That checks the first 3 boxes, and he's got all of that. So what we're finding out with Terry is his play, obviously, covering all 3 of those traits at any level, and running 4.3, being that speed we're talking about. We're just teaching him every position that he could possibly play, and you really, with a player like that, have to almost save him from himself, because he'll just keep going and going and going, and he only has 1 speed. So really, with a player like that works so hard and is so blue collar and talented, you just have to really pace him and only use him where needed. But when he's on the learning curve right now, he's probably getting a little more work than he normally will, because he's getting obviously a good amount of reps on offense as well. But really, with a player like that, you just got to make sure they're not overdoing it, because they'll do anything you ask, any way you want to do it, and they're just special people, and he's certainly one of those.
How does your system kind of differ from Ben Kotwica's, and what kind of habits and coaching points have you been trying to get your players up on in this first couple weeks that you've had him here?
So I think Jay said this the other day, most of our systems, there's a lot of carryover. Really what we're working on is the fundamentals, and we teach our fundamentals through drills. So anytime that we watch video, we want the drills we're doing on the field to actually show up in a game. And you'd be surprised that there's people that work on drills that don't show up in the game much. Or there may be a year where a certain drill doesn't show up or the situation doesn't come up. But really, there's a lot of carryover. But just teaching our language of our fundamentals through our drill work, that's really the only learning curve, what the guys are going through. And then I know most of the coaches in the NFL, and probably the difference in all of us is going to be personality. So if you go by the rule of thirds, if I'm here, I go somewhere else. As soon as I get there, 1/3 of the guys are going to like me, and 1/3 of the guys won't care, and 1/3 probably won't. So with that being said, you got to be who you are. And I am a believer in, as you grow in coaching, of trying to build bridges to players. I know that's more talked about in the last few years, not only in coaching but in the business world with all the public speakers and motivating and social media. And I can get on and listen to any motivational speaker I want that spoke at IBM or other big companies and take all his quotes. So with these players, and kids today getting exposed to all those good motivational speakers nonstop. You got to challenge yourself as a coach to be pretty good from a personality standpoint and challenge yourself to build bridges to these guys. So I would say that that's what would be the difference in most of the coaches, and our systems are going to be fairly similar. So there's a lot of carryover, and I'm just trying to stay within my personality and coach through that.
So speaking of drills, I was noticing you using soccer balls today.
Yes.
What's behind that, and what are some other things?
That was a punt block drill, and if I was a punter, I would be getting cut right now by Bruce because I got 68 punts blocked in a 5-minute period. So that either we got to get some new protectors or I got to get a better, faster operation time. But that was a punt block circuit where we work on finding the block point, and actually you'd be surprised when you see players that work free in a rush and no one's touching them and they still miss. A lot of that is merely having your hands properly positioned and targeting the ball in the proper way, and that's what we work on in that drill.
Where did that come from? Where'd you get that one?
That's a drill that's actually been around a long time. One of the twists that we do on it is we have the guys leave from different angles to the block point, and a lot of people do that too, but I'm just saying they need to learn that if they are approaching from a wider angle as opposed to right up the middle of the formation, that you're going to approach the punter in a different manner. And really what happens is, and talking about drills, you can work drills and cementing that in their head, because in special teams you're teaching a player how to play 4 different positions, not just running back or receiver or DB. Those guys do what they call their everyday drills all the time. Well, we can't do that because we have to get in punt return, kickoff return. So those guys are playing 4 spots. So with a drill like that, showing game clips and doing it where you can reference it, because you can't really do it enough to make rote memory or muscle memory. So you really have to hammer it in, and that's why a drill is such a great picture to communicate with the players. So I'm going to refer to that drill a lot. So we're playing a preseason game and someone comes free, then I'll say, that's like that drill we did with the soccer balls and the volleyballs. You approach from the C gap, take this angle, put your hands like this, and imagine me sitting there. Unfortunately, that guy back there in the preseason is going to be better than me.
Nate, I think you guys were 25th in yards per punt return last year. How big of an emphasis is it to get better there, and how can you guys get better there?
Yes, well, so much of the return game, and I know you all know this stuff, but just you asked the question. So the return game has a lot to do with the person back there, because there are people that are gifted and you don't block a soul and they catch it and get yards. There are people that make great decisions. There are people that are conservative and only catch the ball and return it when they have a lot of room, and fair catch it anytime someone's close. So even the returnable punts that they catch vary. So it starts with that guy. If you could have an aggressive guy that might get tackled for a 0 gain because he was taking a chance, and the very next time he does it, that first guy misses him and he goes for 40, and you were chewing him out on the one before for not fair catching it. So some of those guys that are a little bit of risk takers are pretty good returners too, and the conservative guys can be as well. So it starts with that person. You got to catch the punt first, make a good decision, then the blocking. So you could, and this is something that you have to sell to players when you're in my shoes, you can, if you guys were my punt return team and we have this great scheme and we're going to do this, and you're selling everyone on that scheme, and you go out and play someone and they hit you 5 punts that hang 5 seconds and are 45 yards, you're fair catching every single one of those. If we're on offense and I want to run power, I want to run wide zone, I'm going to call it. And if they blitz, then we're going to have an RPO or a check or something like that. But in the kickoff and punt return game, you get what you get in terms of the kick. So matching all that stuff up is a challenge, and that's why when you're in our position as special teams coaches, getting those guys to keep busting their butt and keep blocking and keep believing. So when you get that low hang time punt in the middle of the field, hopefully you've got the right call on. So that's the challenge of that, is really matching up the blocking with a good returner, and the better the returner is, it makes the blocking better.
Coach, two quick things. One, with a guy like McLaurin, in the pre-draft interview process, when you all have him as the number one special teamer on the board, as has been said about him, how much input do you have? Are you in the room for some of those interviews?
What we do here is that I do a lot of our work in the train station interviews, because a lot of the train station or the informals, a lot of those guys are more of the special teams players, and the top picks, those types of guys. And you'd have to talk to the personnel guys about how they choose the guys they're going to interview. But if it happens to be really high pick, then my input on him isn't going to be maybe as important or listened to as maybe a down-the-road player. And I'm not necessarily talking about how we do it with the Redskins, but just over the years, I've done a lot of my work in the informal interviews, and then a guy like Terry, who could be a higher pick, I'm going to eventually bump into him, or our personnel guys may have me interview him on my own. That way I don't need to be in the formal interviews in the hotel unless they want me in there. I can get more work done behind the scenes, so to speak.
Sure. And then the other thing is about we haven't talked about the two specialists yet. You've got Hopkins and Tressway kind of locked in. Other places around the league are kind of still figuring out who their specialists are going to be this season. Chicago's had this really public kicking competition for months. So at this time of year in the summer, does it help your job at all? Does it make you feel more comfortable to be coming in and knowing you've got guys locked in who are reliable, who've been reliable in the past, and kind of have a contract?
So when you have specialists that are in place and talented like ours are, continuity, everyone loves continuity with talent. The only time you wouldn't enjoy continuity is if you thought you needed to improve your talent level. But obviously, those guys both are very, very talented, and everyone also has stuff they can get better at, and that's what they're working on. But I've been very impressed with their professionalism. You would both categorize both of those guys as workers. They are very blue collar, and you have to say whoa instead of go with them too, which is a good thing. But for the most part, when you have specialists that are talented in place, then yes, that's a good thing.
Coach, you mentioned the workload on Terry, obviously asking him to do maybe too much or handle as much as he is, but he told me after practice that he'd like to return kicks.
Yes.
How do you balance that, again, with that workload that you were talking about, and as well at a position or an area of the game that seems to be, I guess, less important now more than ever?
Yes, well, that's a very good question. And there was a lady one time that asked me on a Sunday, what do you do during the week? Like, she thought we just showed up for games on Sunday, so I'm prefacing the answer with that. So during practice, for example, when I'm not working with the specialist, we are observing, watching players, watching their movement patterns. This time of year, certainly evaluating the roster. So if the personnel department or Jay has a question, what do you think of this guy? We'd be prepared to answer in terms of, we like the way he moves, or he doesn't change direction like we want. So what do I do when I'm not working with the specialist is evaluate those guys. So I literally sit there, and if I'm watching Terry McLaurin, for example, run a whole bunch of routes, deep post routes right before a kickoff return period, then I need to monitor, like, hey, Terry, get back here and watch, and maybe not give him the first couple. So literally, physically monitor him. So that you got to observe and just watch, and that's a great question, because if I'm oblivious to how much he's getting, then that's not good for him either. And, for example, not talking about Terry, but I was more referencing that type of player that's such a blue-collar hard worker and managing them. And like I said, Terry fell in that category. But let's say a guy like Terry was a backup, and the period before his special teams period, the starter hurt his ankle or something, and all of a sudden he's getting every single rep. I need to be aware of that. So watching, that's a way to do that. So
We're miles away from projecting 53-man rosters
Yes.
for real, but obviously when we tend to look at it, we tend to look at it by position, but you're viewing, obviously the last few spots often go to guys on special teams.
Yes.
Just curious at this point, who are some guys that maybe kind of are standing out to you on special teams that have a chance to make this team in that capacity?
Yeah, that watching the 53, I mean, and I'm not even trying to be funny here, but what you guys are doing over there, I'm doing the exact same thing. And obviously I get communicated with by anyone from personnel or Jay, hey, what do you think of this guy? Let's keep an eye. We may move someone up a depth chart. If I start getting the sense that we're really liking this guy, then I need to get him up here and get a more urgent evaluation on him. So that's an ongoing process. But it probably, with where I'm at, learning these guys, it would be unfair for me to single anybody out. I mean, any of the guys that have played well here last year that would stand out certainly are still standing out. A new person that's been a really good professional, and I don't know how much special teams he will play, but he's certainly battling for a spot, would be a guy like John Bostic, who's not been around here, but he has been a real professional. But he would be a guy, I'm sure, when you talk to the defensive coaches or Jay or someone in personnel, that John was brought in here to compete. So he would certainly be in that area, but he's someone that's new to all of you folks, but he's doing a nice job. And like I said, the draft picks that you would expect, their DNA, you've heard it from the pundits before the draft and our people after the draft, all those guys are doing good. There's just a big learning curve with them. But I can't really single a bunch of people out. But John would just be one that's new, that you guys probably don't have a lot of data on right now, that's doing a nice job just being a good pro. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Coach. Right. Thank you.